Hello, Eric Eisenhut here, and welcome to another episode of our Goalkeeper Icon Academy's Coaches Panel Discussions. Today, we have a very special topic that is dear to me and a very special guest. The topic today is mental performance counseling and how it can benefit young athletes. Today, we have with us Mr. Ryan Defabaugh. Ryan is a licensed clinical professional counselor. He's the owner of MBS Performance Counceling. This deals with athletic performance for kids or athletes age 12 to 25 and developing positive mindsets and how to deal with anxiety, anger, emotional management, life situations, and how goal setting plays a big part. He's 12 years of NCAA coaching experience with a stop on the Penn State men's soccer team and was also a former college soccer player. Without further ado, let's introduce ourselves to Mr. Ryan Defabaugh. Ryan, hello.
Hey, Eric. How you doing today?
Good, thanks. Very well. Let's get right into it, sir. Talk to me about MBS Performance Counseling, and just give me a general overview, and then we're going to dive deeper into it as we go, but go right ahead.
Yeah, so MBS Performance Counseling, MBS stands for mind, body, and spirit. So I really believe in the overall person and developing the overall individual to be our best. Not the best in comparison to others, but our personal best. So what we do is we delve into the individual, what drives them, their purpose, and help them make sense of their world, their athletic, academic, social, and personal worlds.
Nice. I have an experience with your site and with what you do, so I'm going to get right into it in regards to the purpose and the why. You speak a lot to the people's, what's your why? I see that a lot. Speak to that in regards to a resilient mindset. How does that set someone up to succeed?
I mean, I think our purpose and our why is really the foundation that we build out of. Without a reason for what we're doing, it's really easy to quit. And it's really easy when things get hard to step back or to give up or to give yourself a narrative of, well, it's not going to work out anyway, and I didn't care. But when we can purposely set up that foundation, and I break the why up into a couple different components. I break why up into expectation, into your passion / ignition, what made you first fall in love with it, your motivation, which is really like kind of what makes you go day to day with your why and your purpose, and then also your sacrifices, what you give up to then pursue your why and pursue what your dreams are.
Speak to those four, because I know you also speak a lot about self-reflection. And I think self-reflection, it's something that I did at a very young age. And that's only because I was lucky enough to have some great coaches at a young age. And there's nothing but luck to that. I mean that. But they taught me life lessons, and a lot of it had to do with what you're talking about. So I was blessed to have that. And I think not only did it help me in my soccer career, but it really helped me in life, I call them life lessons, right? But if you could speak more to the self-reflection piece and how it relates to those four characteristics that you spoke to.
Well, definitely. And I agree with you. It's something I did at a young age without knowing why I was doing it. I'm just a natural cognitive person, I guess. And then as I started studying this, I started saying, hey, there's a reason behind it. And more when I worked with college athletes at Penn State and other programs I worked at, I saw that this was such a powerful thing for what separated some of our players from each other. And so when we do some of that self-reflection, we go into expectation is a big one, especially for our young players. Why are you playing the game? What makes you love it? What makes you want to show up every day? What's your expectation and where do you want to get to? Because that's going to drive like your coaches, that's going to drive you, that's going to drive kind of that next step. If you want to just kind of be on a team because you love being around others and that you just like playing, well, that's a different expectation than the person who says, I want to get a college scholarship. And that's where when you say, I want that college scholarship, well, maybe you're sacrificing more. And so that takes some reflection into there. My expectations drive my sacrifices. It drives my day to day. When we look at passion, ignition, I know I mentioned earlier what makes you love the game. Do you love it? That passion, ignition is what made you first say, I want to pursue this. And when we can identify that, and I mean at a deep level. So when athletes, I hear from athletes all the time, especially the college athletes I work with, is, well, I love it. And they think that's the end of their answer. And I go, no, no, no. Why do you love it? I go, well, because, and it makes them have to get below that surface a little bit. And once we get below the surface and get into the more difficult answer, now we're getting some genuine feedback for ourselves.
I love that. And there's a Chinese proverb that the seven levels of why. And that was introduced to me when I was in my professional life, in my mid-20s. But it gets rid of the fluff. You know, it gets rid of that answer you just said where it's like, because I love it. Well, why do you love it? And then it's like, oh, I love the team environment. Well, why do you love the team environment? You know, now we're on 2. And it's, well, I like being a valued member of a society that's fighting for the same purpose. Great. Why? And, you know, now we're on level, and you get deeper and deeper. And all of a sudden that's your, again, I compare it to the business sense because that's where I applied it as well. But that's your mission statement and your vision statement. And it's very similar to what you do with a lot of kids.
Definitely. And I'm glad you brought the business side, because I have to do that to myself every day and say, why am I doing this? When I was starting out this company and getting out of college coaching, it was exactly that. I have seen this as an issue. I've seen the mental emotional training not be addressed. So this is a passion of mine. This is something I've seen that has helped players grow. Okay, how can I bring that to a bigger stage? And yeah, so we're constantly doing that as adults as well. And when we can teach our younger players to do that, it's just going to open that doorway for them even earlier in life.
Do you find, Ryan, when talking to kids, you asked about what their expectations are and everything. Do you find that there's a realistic view and then sometimes there's a false view with what kids bring to the table when they're talking to?
That can be. I try to treat their expectations as realistic view, because I think I have to, but usually I have a shirt that says optimism on. And optimism means a realistic standpoint. But if a 13-year-old's coming to me and saying, hey, I want to accomplish this, I'm not going to sit there and say, yeah, go ahead, you've got it, it's easy. I'm going to be very realistic with them and say, well, here's what it takes to get to that point. But I think if we channel our physical, our mental, and emotional energies all into one thing, and we're willing to sacrifice those things outside of us, I do think most dreams can be realistic. Now, yeah, there are the ones that you say, okay, well, tell me more about that. Let's hear what that expectation actually looks like in real life to you, and help them bring it back down to something they can actually grasp.
How often, let's flip it. What about on the opposite end where you see someone performing at a high level, but the mental side, I see this all the time with goalkeepers in particular. If there's a position on the field that deals with, I believe, more mental stress than anybody, it's the goalkeeper. And they're playing at a high level, but for some reason, their belief is down here. How do you get them to realize the realism of where they are performing at compared to where they believe they're performing?
I love that. I love how you phrased it. I can say, as a former goalkeeper, I have felt that before. And I remember I played Division III college, and I got there, and it was the first time that a couple of my teammates turned to me and said, hey, what are you doing here? I said, what do you mean? I said, why aren't you at a D1 program? And I had never really thought that about myself at that younger age when I looked at that. And it was the first time I said, hey, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I deserve more. I've got this. So when I'm working with young athletes, when we're setting those expectations, if I do get the sense that they're too low, or by their tone, or they look down when they speak, or they're showing some of those signs of lack of confidence, I start maybe pushing that envelope a little bit. That gets us into almost like the flow model, where we look at flow is right above that comfort zone. And so when we're looking at the relationship between like skill level and challenge level being on kind of the y-axis and skill level being on the x-axis, we're really looking at how we can push those kids out of their comfort zone just enough. We don't want to push them too far because we push them over into anxiety. But when we say the challenge meets the perceived skill, and we show them that their perceived skill is high and help them get out of comfort, well, that starts pushing them to grow, and maybe pushing their dreams and their goals as well, and pushing those expectations.
I love saying to kids, get comfortable being be comfortable being out of your comfort zone, because that's where growth takes place. I say it all the time, and kids look at me like I have 3 heads. They're like, what does that mean? What do you mean be comfortable and come? And can you help me clarify that? If I'm going to say that to a kid, how can I reword that where they understand that for them to advance and develop and grow, they need to be put in those, just those uncomfortable situations that they're not used to. Why is that important?
Yeah, and I was watching episode 2, and I think Richard touched on this a little bit too, and he was talking about the value of failure, and I was like, oh, I love this. I think I watched that part like 3 or 4 times, because I teach them to fall in love with failure. I teach them to fall in love with the process, and so I preach process over result all the time. Process meaning our development isn't like based on today. If we win the game, it doesn't mean our development's over. It doesn't mean we've made it. If we lose the game, it doesn't mean our development stops. It doesn't mean we're not good enough. The wins, the losses, the success, the failures, they're all teaching moments. And if we learn to step back from those, and then I tell the kids all the time, step back, and how would you respond to it as a friend if you were telling a friend advice? Because then it gives us a broader picture and a different viewpoint, and allows us to look at it a little more analytically. And when we can fall in love with the ups, the downs, the success, the failure, and look at them all as teaching points, that's our development right there. And so that's really a point that I hammer home with any teams I'm working with coaches I'm working with players I'm working with, is this is a process. I don't know if you read the book, The Alchemist, and it's all about the journey, all about the process. And it's my all-time favorite. There's so many great lessons and quotes out there, but it's all about the journey, and that we're all looking to discover our personal treasure at the end.
You fall in love with failure. Awesome. How do you get a 10-year-old kid to fall in love with failure and enjoy the process when they're having a difficult time picking it up? And I'm gonna use a goalkeeping example. I have a difficult time I can make the contour catch, but when I put it outside of my body here, it goes through my hands. I'm failing, and it's taken me forever to do it. How am I, as a 10-year-old kid, how do you talk to them to enjoy the process, to get that comfort level where they want to continue to fail in training, so when they get to a game, they can apply it without even thinking in a very, very, in the right way? Let's put it that way. Yeah.
So the younger the age, the more like just simplistic and basic it needs to be, right? But a lot of times I would start there and say, well, tell me when you were failing with the contour catch. Like, when was that not easy? And I'd let them identify something that wasn't easy that they now know how to do. Did you always know how to ride your bike? Well, no, I fell a lot. Okay, what about now? Oh, I buzz around, I'm jumping off curbs, I'm doing it. Okay, how? Well, because I kept doing it. And I kept trying, and I got back up after I fell, and I did it again. Yeah. I say, everything in life is that way. I talk, and then I'll do a little self-disclosure and tell them something I failed at as an adult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the grind, right? Like, enjoying the grind. And I say to the older goalkeepers, because I mean, I get asked this question a lot. I want professional goalkeeping. What is that? Like, define that for me. And I say it to parents all the time, like, define that for me. What is it? What is professional goalkeeping? What's at the elite goalkeeping training? What is that? Because when you find it, let me know, because we're going to do the same. We do the same thing, whether I'm with a 10-year-old or whether I'm with an 18-year-old, right? I got this from MLS goalkeeper coach, Todd Hoffer, with Real Salt Lake. I love Todd, yeah. Todd says it all the time. He's like, what does that mean? He's like, what I do with an 18-year-old is almost the exact same as what I do with a 10-year-old. Now, my expectations might change, right? And how I serve a ball might be different, but the technical piece to it is the exact same. So you're going to need to enjoy those same monotonous drills from the age of 10 till you literally stop playing, from a goalkeeper perspective, right? And it's the same thing with technical growth with a field player. You're going to do those same moves over and over again with your footwork, because when you're in that pressure situation on the field, you can't think about it. Your body just needs to react. So you need to do it thousands of times before it becomes an innate movement. And I think that's the grind to get there. That's hard, and the 4 levels of training. Richard talks about it in episode 2 as well, as, not knowing, right? And then now I know I'm failing at it. Now I'm grinding. Now it's getting there. So it's like, I'm obviously ignorant. I completely destroyed the professional words that go with those 4 steps. I understand that. But
conscious incompetence and unconscious competence. Yeah.
Thank you for putting the true value behind what I'm trying to say.
No, but it's so true. And that's a lot what we look at when we're saying about teaching, whether it's in school, whether it's coaching, whether it's the mental, emotional side. And it's just, hammered home by when I talk to professional athletes and ask them the hardest part. The hardest part for them a lot of times is that next level, that mental emotional piece. It doesn't go away. And the more you learn how to, I use the word manage on purpose, because we can't control our emotions. We can't control our thoughts. They happen to us. But when we learn how to hear them, decipher them, and manage them, and we can do that in a split second, that takes practice just like any physical skill.
I've never heard that before. I really like that. I'm stealing that from you, sir. Well done.
It's yours.
Talk to me about priorities. You also get into prioritization of priorities. Can you speak to that, and what's your take on that?
I think life is busy. And I think we have a lot of things that stand in our way. I call those things snags, things that like snag us from our goals, from our dreams. They can be internal, they can be external. And so when we talk about prioritizing with our clients, it's one of the earlier things I do. Whether you're 10 or you're 21. And we sit and we break it down, like, what's most important to you in your life? I want you to tell me the 7 most important things to you. And then when you tell me those 7, I'm going to ask you to break those down even further and tell me your top 3. Really rank them out. Because if we're trying to live life by 7 priorities, I know I can't manage that. I get pulled from family, work, staying fit physically, staying fit mentally. Those are 3 or 4 big things that if I put another thing on my plate, it's too much. And so our kids are taking on a lot. You think about the expectations that are on our youth right now, from school, sport, trying to get a scholarship for college from the age of 13 on, both academically and athletically, friend stuff, social media. It's crazy. And so to help them say, well, here's what's most important to me: family, school, soccer. Okay, great. That means 4, 5, and 6 doesn't mean they're not important. It just means let's put those 3 things first. And let's look at what you're doing with your time. Does your time represent your priorities? Are you spending your time on the things that you say are important? And if you are, awesome. You're probably finding some success in there, and you're probably reducing some of that anxiety. But if you're not, well, now you're probably raised that anxiety, raised that stress, and you probably feel like you're doing everything 20, 30, 40%. You probably don't feel you're doing anything well enough. So it's really about breaking it down, redefining what's most important to you, and putting your time and energy into those things first. And then once you've crossed off 1 through 3 for the day, now maybe it's time to reach out to a friend and call them, or play your video game, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and especially my wife's a pleaser, right? Like, she loves to just always help people, but priorities get put all over the place because who's more important than what, and it's hard, So then it gets down to prioritizing who and why. And I think there's that mental image, that approach, we'll call it. I see it a lot in kids where they have so many priorities. They just want to please everybody: their mom, their dad, their teacher, their coaches, the different coaches, multi-sport athletes, so how do you mentally prepare a kid to deal with all those priorities and make tough decisions and be quote unquote mentally fit?
A lot of it's autonomy. And this is working with the parents now too, because sometimes the parents think they know what the kid wants and they've never actually had a conversation with the kid. I have multiple clients that are multi-sport and playing 2 or 3 sports in a season. I go, ooh, how does that work? It's like, well, on Tuesday I leave this early and I get to that late. On Wednesday I leave that early and get to that late. And they found this balance. I said, well, who came up with that? Because she was talking about it very proudly and very much like in order. And she goes, well, I did. And I talked to my coaches and I said, if I'm going to play all these sports, here's how it needs to work. And it was like, awesome. And this is not an 18, 19, 20-year-old. This is on the lower age level. And it says a lot about like the parent, the coaches that were coaching her, and herself. But it's that give them autonomy, ask them what matters to them most, ask them how they would like balance this out. And I think even our youngest ones at the 10, 11, 12, they have an idea, right? And I think doing that, but then also we'll do a schedule. We'll say, okay, what's your day look like? Okay, tell me where your time is. Because I hear that a lot. Like, I don't have enough time to do this or that. And we break it down, and sometimes they don't. And it says, okay, well, what has to give if you're saying this is important? That's where we go back to sacrifice and our why. If you don't want to give anything, and then maybe that's not something that's as important to you as you thought. And so now let's pull that out of the equation and now that your time is what it is. It's not easy. It's not easy for us as adults. Like you said, your wife being a pleaser, I think we all want to like take on. We're taught that like, and this is from, what's his name? Finding Mastery podcast. It's awesome. Stephen Gervais, Michael Gervais is a sports psychologist for the Seattle Seahawks. And he always says like, we think we need to do more to be more. And I love how he puts it. He goes, no, we need to flip that. We need to be more so that we can do more. And that's, again, working on that internal, working on that, and maybe taking some things off our plate so we can be better before we take on more.
It's interesting too, because I think kids want to do everything. I really do. I think kids, if they had the opportunity to be multi-sport athletes, I think they would. Where I, as a parent, this is what I do with my own 12-year-old and my own 9-year-old. And when they want to play multi-sport, fall, for instance, they play soccer, baseball, and football. Okay, that ain't gonna work. Let's figure that out, right? And so neither of them play baseball in the fall. Great. Now we have football, which is Monday through Thursday.
Yeah.
And we have soccer, which is Monday, Wednesday, and then both have games on weekends. Luckily, the games are on Saturdays and Sundays, so there's no conflict. But during the week, there's a conflict. So I sit the kids down, and we went through the schedule, just like you talked about, and they created the schedule. Here's the best part, and I believe that there needs to come responsibility with this too, from a communication standpoint. I literally said to both of my children, we are now going to go talk to the coach. Now, when we went to the coach, I didn't say a word, and they knew that, and they were scared. Like they didn't know what to say. And here's the other thing: the coaches were scared too, because I'd be like, hey, I got something I want to talk to with my kid about. And like, okay, so we showed up before practice. And the coach is looking at me, okay, what's going on? Like, well, my son Max wants to talk to you about something. And he's like, listen, I love football, but I love soccer. And here's my conflict. And here's what we're going to do. Here's our proposed solution. Are you okay with that? Or do you think we should look at it from a different angle? Because I love both. I want to play both. But when you communicate that, now the two parties who you're impacting realize what's happening, and they work with you on that. And also, it also creates, I believe, a life lesson at a young age that communication face-to-face is very important. It's not this, right? We're not text messaging. We're not emailing. And you need to be right face-to-face, because you know what the coach did? Coach was ecstatic. He let my son go. He looked at me and goes, hey, Eric, I thought you were going to talk to me about a coaching athlete issue or something bad happened. Like, I didn't know what to expect. This is great. Thank you for letting me do it. And I'm like, okay, absolutely. Thank you for understanding our issue. And he's looked back and I have the same problem. But how do you deal with it is a huge, and it takes a lot of stress away too. When everyone understands what your priorities are and how you're going to manage it, it takes all your stress away, and it works. So
that's an awesome example.
Coaches.
Yeah, awesome example. And I love how it just brought every player in there, like your son, the coach, and you all around the table. And it wasn't, here's what we're doing, deal with it. It was, here's what we think. What do you think? And it let everybody have a stake in the decision, and then everybody feels good leaving there. And that's an awesome example of it.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of, the more people you let it have an impact on something, the more they take ownership of it. And if you can get a bunch of people taking ownership of something, of one decision, everyone's going to support it. Whereas if you come out and just say, hey, here's what we're doing. We're only going to be here on Mondays and Wednesdays. We're not going to be here on Tuesdays and Thursdays and you're going to have to deal with it. Well, now you're going to deal with the coach giving a little bit of an attitude, probably get less playing time, and it just happens. That's just natural. But you include them, it makes life a lot easier when it comes down to the priorities and how you make decisions too.
Definitely. And
I want to go to, if I could, I want to get into good to great, and I want to get into the code from a coaching aspect now. From all the coaches that are out there, we deal with a lot of kids. And we see the mental aspect of things and how one day they're flying, next day they're down, and how they're trying to juggle all this. What's your suggestions for coaches out there that are seeing this? What's their action? What do you suggest to them?
Well, that's a big topic and a big one to take on, and I like it. But I like the discussion behind it, because I think it's multifaceted. One, I love, if you've read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, it talks about that from the business side. And I love the opening quote is basically, good is the greatest enemy of great, right? So, and that comes back to the flow model that we mentioned earlier. Good is the kind of that comfort zone, that everything feels good. It's easy. I'm challenged just a little bit, but not enough to make me feel like I will fail. This is good. Now, if we settle ourselves in there, or coaches let athletes settle in there, we're never going to push out of it, right? It's why we have to tell our kids, turn off the TV, get off the couch, get outside, right? Because if we let them just sit on the couch and watch TV all day, guess what? As human beings, we want comfort, we want ease. There's a reason behind that, and that's our natural go-to. So how do we adapt that behavior? Is by helping ourselves, finding ways to push ourselves outside that comfort zone, or as coaches, purposely manipulating the scenarios to push the players. And each player is going to be a little bit different here. Some players are intrinsically motivated, right? So they're going to go out and they're going to work and they're going to push themselves. So maybe it's you introducing the skill at a higher level to them. Some athletes are more extrinsically motivated. Meaning they're going to want that praise, they're going to want that feedback, they're going to sometimes want that trophy, whatever it is that drives them. So it's for coaches is one, understanding the motivational levels of our players, understanding, are they comfortable? Are they at their best? Okay, how do I push them one more step? You see it in training all the time. Do we make the space smaller? Do we make the touch restriction less? Do we can manipulate certain things as coaches to push those athletes just within normal training. But then on the individual level, can we understand our athletes a little bit more and take the time to find how we can push each one? Again, it might just be one step further. It might just be one aspect of their game a little bit more. Hey, I'm going to challenge you to be more direct, more accurate on your throws, on your distribution, because that's what's going to unlock you to that next level. That's what's going to make you a more top level goalkeeper here. I'm going to challenge you on playing off your line a little bit more because you're being way too comfortable back here. So let's take you out of that comfort zone. And I'm going to tell you, when the ball's here, you can't drop back behind this line. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if we end up giving up a goal because of it. I'm, as a coach, on that developmental piece, it's not about right now, it's about down the road. And so how can we separate ourselves as coaches and as parents from the result and come back to the process as well? Because the process is what makes us great. The result in the moment is what keeps us maybe at good.
What's your take? I'm a little off topic here, but I want to bring in mentorships. I'm a big fan of mentorships. I really am. Even when I was in the business world, the new hires, I always had them with someone above them just so they could learn from them a little bit and understand that just the ins and outs. They have someone to go to, like a big brother, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. What's your take on mentorships with the process and everything that we're talking about, enjoying the grind and all that stuff? What's your take on that?
I can't say enough about mentorships. I think coaches are natural mentors in a way.
Yeah.
I think the more we can connect, I think of the European models. When we're in Brazil, we took the Penn State team to Brazil, and you see the youth team training down here, and then here, until the top of the hill was the full team. And you see the players idolizing each other. You see them working their way up the hill. You see the older players helping the younger ones. And it's just, I don't think you can put a value on that. I look back on my own experiences. I just did a podcast for a High Performers podcast by Dr. Josh Funk, and he did a great job of talking about mentorship and how people lead us to where we go. And I look at coaches I had, from basketball coaches to soccer coaches to the coaches I was around at Penn State, not even working with directly, but just seeing how they operate and be able to ask them questions. I think the more we connect our young players to older players and coaches, and they're just going to grow, and they're going to learn that they're not alone in the self-doubt and the struggling at times on the mental emotional side. Because when you hear a professional athlete is dealing with the same stuff and managing it, it makes it a lot more, it makes it something that you can accomplish as well and you can overcome as well.
It's interesting. I love when I run goalkeeper training sessions at the club level, I love it when my academy goalkeepers stick around and watch the older goalkeepers, or come early and watch the older goalkeepers. Let me tell you why. Because they're going to see that the grind is the same. So that process is the same for this age as it is for this age. In addition to that, you're also going to hear that the older kids make mistakes too. And when as a coach, I'm giving feedback to an older player, and that feedback is very similar to a younger player, that younger player now understands that, you know what, I'm okay with making a mistake, because guess what? 18-year-old Johnny just made a similar mistake, and I know it's part of the process to get better. So now they feel a little more comfortable with making an error and loving failure and enjoying that grind to get to that next step. So I'm really big into mentorships and believe that clubs should try and implement that in some setting. And I don't know how. I do, but this isn't what the topic's about, right? So I'm not going to go down that road, but I feel mentorships are a big part of growth and development with kids.
But I think it ties in. As you speak about that, I think of, if you've heard of Johari's window, and it's a concept that's really about self-discovery, and it compares what you know, what's known by you, and what's known by others. So when you look at it as kind of a Punnett square in a way, and you say known by me, known by others, that's open. Like, it's out in the open. That's who I am. Like, people see me, they know me this way, I know myself that way. But you can also say what I know about myself and what others don't know about me, right? And unknown to others. And that's kind of hidden. That's what we hide inside. We know this and we feel this, but we haven't shared it out there yet. And then there's the blind, where it's unknown to ourselves, but known by others, right? And then there's the unknown, which is unknown by others and ourselves. And what we're talking about a lot is, like with mentorship, maybe someone else might see something in us that we don't see in ourselves, and they can help unlock that. Maybe just by watching somebody, they might not know it about us and we might not know about us, but that unknown window starts to shrink because we start learning by seeing more. We start learning by being around new experiences. So I think it definitely ties in to kind of the topics that we're talking about, because it's a lot about self-discovery. It's a lot about knowing our why, knowing our values, tapping back into ourselves. And the more that we're able to see others and learn from others, it helps us learn about ourselves.
Yeah, I like that, man. And the other thing too is when Tony DeChico, I grew up under Tony at Soccer Plus, and one of the phrases he used all the time, catch him being good. Coach him being good. And it's just that positive reinforcement. And again, it's not the cheerleader aspect of it, but it's just the mental, like, oh, all right, cool. And I love it. I always go back to that. And I know I've already referenced it, but it seems to tie in here. And I know we've only scratched the surface on MBS Performance Counseling and everything that you do. But we have about 4 minutes left. Brian, I want you to just take your time and just wrap this up. And what's your message?
Well, I'm going to pull out a quote of one of my mentors that I was blessed to meet as well, Coach Walter Barr up at Penn State, soccer legend. And I remember my first day up there, I think I was like 25, and he pops in, and I'm like, oh my God, that's Walter Barr. What do I say? And he starts asking me questions about things. I'm like, no, I want to ask you. And the one thing he always said was, you're never as good as you think you are when you win, and you're never as bad as you think you are when you lose. And that quote has stuck with me from college coaching to club coaching to now what I do here, because it's about that balance. It's about, again, stepping back and be able to say, you know what, there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, there's going to be good, there's going to be bad. You know, let me love all of that. If I love playing, if I want to go be a scientist, if I want to go be a soccer player, if I want to go be the best police officer I can be, if I want to go be the best nurse I can be, whatever it is, like, there's going to be ups and downs through that process. And so from MBS standpoint, really what we wrap it up on is everybody has the ability to achieve what they want. Everybody. I don't care if you're 10 years old or 50 years old. If you want something, you can go get it. And it's about being able to, one, voice what you want and organize what you're thinking, what your desires are, what your goals are. And then two, be able to purposely align. I love the word alignment. Align your physical, your mental, and your emotional energy and approach to it to go get it. And that takes time, and it takes someone else to be able to hear you, work through it, reflect back to you, and it takes work. And it can be difficult and it can be vulnerable, but at the end of the day, it is one of the most rewarding things that you can do in your life, is to kind of be a little bit more open and say, here's what I want. How do I go get it?
That's awesome, man. And the other thing, Thomas, so my advice to coaches all the time is, if you want to go from a good coach to a great coach, somehow incorporate life lessons into your work.
Yes.
Just somehow, because everything, Ryan, you talking about has nothing to do with soccer.
Right.
Everything we're talking about here has to do with life lessons, with business, with relationships, with dealing with parents, with dealing with teachers, with dealing with your boss, with having a relationship with an individual, with just growth in general. And I feel for those that want to grow and feel the mental part might be getting in the way, you're the perfect resource. And with that, I'd like to just quickly, how can people get in touch with you, and what's the best way to contact MBS Performance Counseling?
A couple different ways. We have our website, www.mbsperformancecounseling.com. You can find me on Facebook. That's probably where I'm most active. I know that's an old person's forum now, but MBS Performance Counseling on Facebook. On Twitter, we're at Counseling MBS, and we're also on Instagram at MBS Counseling. I also have a online course. So I have taken a lot what I do with teams and individuals, and I put it into an online format, and it's called Perform with Purpose. And so it breaks down a lot what we talked about today, the exercises. Everything has an introduction, objectives, an application to athletes, a quick little video of me speaking about the topic, and then it has worksheets that you can actually apply that to. So everything from resilience to optimism to developing your why, prioritizing, using self-talk, visualization, all those different strategies. And so, we're going to offer a good discount to anybody with the GK Icon code. So we'll be able to post that and get that out to the listeners. That way, anybody who wants to take their learning to another level but isn't right here in front of me, or just likes to work on their own time, can still get the same information.
Yeah, you've allowed me to utilize that, and I have had my two sons involved with it, and it's awesome. And I mean that to anyone out there. It's an awesome opportunity. Go ahead and talk about the price. Go right ahead. Don't feel you can't leave it out there. Go.
And so what we're going to do for GK Icon listeners is the price overall is $174.99. It involves 21 topics with about three sessions worth of videos. Each session I usually do is around $125 to $150. So you're getting 3 sessions at a discount rate right there. But what we're going to do right now for GK Icon listeners is give you a 60% off code. And it's going to be GK Icon 2020. Maybe Eric, like you could post something in the notes of this with the link to the course and the coupon. And you put that in at checkout, it's going to give you 60% off the price of the course. I believe in this. It's really, I want this topic, this information to get out to as many young people as possible. And so I appreciate Eric and GK Icon for this time, and also for being able to get more of these skills out to young athletes to work on the mental, emotional training just as much as the physical.
Awesome. And for those that don't have a calculator on them, that went down from $175 down to $69. Ryan, thank you so much, man. I love this topic. This is a passion of mine, truthfully. I love what you do and how you blend your experience on the pitch and all the life lessons from soccer that you have with your professional counseling services. And I think it's an awesome thing for kids to get into as soon as they can, because it's a big topic in life, never mind sport. So I love what you do, sir. Always a pleasure. Thank you, Ryan, for being with us today.
Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it.
All right, guys. Everyone, thanks. See you at the next episode. Have a good day.